Hi, this is Tamara Drake with UkiahValley.tv, bringing you the latest in news from Mendocino County. In Tuesday's Mendocino County Board meeting, 2nd District Supervisor John McCowan introduced a directive to county department heads to allow greater access to the media. To the collective shock of no one, 5th District Supervisor David Colfax was less than enthusiastic about the idea.
I will support this. I have supported it, and I see no need for us to respond to a particular newspaper's problems with understanding what is said to it.
Health and Human Services Director Carmel Angelo stated that the 2 sets of 29 total potential layoffs in her agency did not share the same likelihood of becoming a reality.
Chances are very good that we could avoid layoffs, and that is continuing what we're doing. We don't fill any vacancies. Nobody travels. There's very minimal overtime, only to transport clients. So we keep with the rigid measures that we've had for cost cutting. We continue with the unanticipated vacancies. We look at the retirements. It's quite possible that we may be able to reach the black without layoffs. There's actually more funding opportunities with social services. Mental health services is pretty much cut and dry. And because it has been such an outstanding and ongoing deficit, and I'm talking about an annual operational deficit, not even talking about a ledger deficit that is just ongoing because of the length of time it takes the state to reimburse us. I think that the challenges are very great in mental health, and that as we restructure, we're definitely looking at layoffs.
Nash Gonzalez of Planning and Building was called before the board to account for his department running over budget.
The public needs to know we just recently, the CEO's office just recently moved the planning team back into the building and planning services. So that will be a long-term savings, but not necessarily so much in this budget year.
And that is correct, Mr. Chairman. Over the long run, by combining the 2 divisions of the 2 departments and creating one department with one manager to oversee the planning team, planning and building services department over the long term, I'm looking at it as a cost savings. But as you indicated, it's not something that would be an immediate cost savings over the next 3 months.
But it wasn't until Sheriff Tom Allman took the podium that the sparks really began to fly.
Sheriff and jail budget. Our sheriff is here. Sheriff, your jail and budget combination budget overrun is $824,000 in the sheriff's unit and $275,000 in the jail unit. So it makes a total of a little over $1.1 million in the red projected for the end of this fiscal year. Have you got a plan for us to close some of that?
Well, I bought a lottery ticket. Mr. Chair and honorable members, board, in August I stood before 3 out of 5 of you, and I think the other 2 were in the audience, and I said public safety is expensive, and I told you that our budget that we had proposed to the CEO's office had been somewhat primarily rejected, and the budget that was printed was $1.5 million under what our projected cost was to run our department with a lot of staffing that the Board of Supervisors has given this sheriff's office to operate. And you know that the next line I'm going to say is we're operating with 47 deputy sheriff, which is the same number of deputy sheriffs this county had in 1972 during Nixon's first term of office, when the population was 35,000, and now our population is 92,000.
Allman said that public safety was expensive and that cutting staff was not an option.
I can't stand in front of you and say we can make up the $1.2 million, Mr. Chair. If that's your question, the answer is no, I can't.
What has happened often in the past is at budget time, whenever there's a discussion of gee, the board would like the sheriff to reduce expenses, and the sheriff typically says, how many deputies do you want me to lay off? Because there's no place else to cut.
I'm telling you, we all know that the cost of running an operation is with the personnel. That's the cost.
Because your bottom line position is if the board were to make any significant cut in the appropriation for the sheriff's office, that will be reflected in less hours on patrol.
If our staff was reduced, the probationary employees would obviously be the ones who would be reduced, and right now they're the ones mainly in the resident posts, and with hopefully 2 new deputies in Covelo very soon.
But you couldn't reassign deputies from the central area to the North County? I
absolutely could, and with that memo, Supervisor, I should go ahead and include an application for Sonoma County Sheriff's Office, because that's what's going to happen. They're going to say, it's as quick for me to drive to Santa Rosa as it is to drive to Willits.
They're not doing a lot of hiring right now.
Yeah. Please just don't say cut the cost of the Sheriff's Office, because we're running on a shoestring as it is, and we don't need to cut the public safety. We don't need to send an image to the public and to the tourists that are going to come to this county that we're going to reduce public safety.
Almond's proposed zip tie program for medical marijuana plants was called into question as a possible solution for the budget crisis.
This board votes today. I have the zip ties in my office. We'll implement it today. But unfortunately, I believe the law is going to require us to go through public hearings to make sure that the amount we're charging is within the legal requirement of what it actually costs the county to do. I don't want to circumvent the law here.
But my point was, were you and the CEOs getting ready to come back to this board and tell us you're ready to do this? Or I don't see what, I mean, I think that needs to come from your office of your plan. Not, I mean, it's your plan, it's going to be revenue for your department. So I think that needs to come from your direction this way and not from our direction your way. I mean, this has been languishing for 2 years now.
And it's been my issue for 2 years too, Mr. Chair. If it's a significant
revenue source, it could seriously help our budget.
I understand it, and I have them in my office ready right now. Once I receive the legal authority to sell them, we're going to sell them.
Well, can I ask County Council, what's the holdup here?
Well, the holdup is that an analysis has to be done as to whether or not, as to how much to charge for those particular zip ties, because it is a fee in the nature of a fee, and the fee has to be reasonably related to the services provided. That analysis hasn't been done yet.
Colfax, though, rallied against the idea as being irrelevant to the discussion since no profits could be made.
The reality here is this is not a solution. I don't even know how we got into this discussion. But if we're going to be bringing on, we can make work for your deputies, but that doesn't seem to be the issue right now. We will not be able to do anything more than show that we use $35 per zip tie to get it out into the field, make sure it's going to the right people, and so on and so forth.
Allman countered that the program would inject money into the general fund for doing something his department did anyway.
In this situation, I believe I'm correct, because I believe the Sheriff's Office is going to be able to charge for a service that we currently provide and we don't get paid for.
Smith then criticized Allman for refusing to consider layoffs in his department.
You only referenced one side of the equation. So what I'm seeing is different from how you're approaching the problem and how Ms. Angelo approached the problem and Mr. Nash, is that you only dealt with one side of the equation.
If you're asking me, Supervisor Smith, am I ready to come in here and suggest, even breathe a hint of layoffs for the Sheriff's Office? The answer is unequivocally no.
Given that we have the budgetary responsibility, I think it is up to you to look at your budget and tell us what you can do to reduce costs. If you're calling it layoffs, call it layoffs. If you're calling it buying less equipment, it's buying less equipment.
I take my responsibilities very seriously, Supervisor.
I know you do.
And we're not hiring people to stand in a corner, and we're not paying people to drive in circles and do nothing.
The vote to allow Carmel Angelo of HHSA to begin exploring layoffs in her department was then granted 5-0.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? So it's carried unanimously?
That was an aye, yeah.
Okay, it's carried unanimously.
Willits police officer Dave Tiller passed away last night after a 2-year struggle with pancreatic cancer. He mentored many families through personal crises and taught karate and self-confidence to many children in community programs. Dave was a motorcycle enthusiast, and his road warrior friends rallied to his side during his final fight, holding numerous benefits and letting him know how much they appreciated him. This is Tamara Drake with Uvtv. Check back often for more local news.